To start sewing on your long stitch binding, you are going to need to have your needle on your waxed floss. You want to make sure that you have a knot tied at the opposite end of the needle, about an inch, maybe 2 inches from the end of your string, of your floss. You also are going to need a paper clip that you can get from Mrs. Roman. You should have all 3 of your signatures ready to go, but I'm only going to use my number 1 signature for this because we're only going to start. In the next 2 videos, you'll see how to add the next 2 signatures. So this is just for the first signature. So I've got my cover, I've got the inside covered with paper, the holes poked, everything is measured and ready to go. And I'm going to start sewing my first signature. So I'm going to open up all the folios for my first signature. I'm going to take my needle and place it through the very top hole, so the one that's right by the number 1. I'm going to go through the entire signature out through the other side, and then while I'm still holding on to my needle, this just makes it easier, I am going to place the tip of the needle in the very top hole, and in the first hole over, so the one on the far left hand side, and I'm going to place that through the hole, so I'm going right through the cover. So on the outside of the cover you can see the needles coming through. I'm going to go ahead and pull. Oh, you can see if you try to do this too quickly, sometimes your thread gets in a knot. If that happens, just try to make the knot as big as you can and pull it apart. Don't keep tugging on the floss as hard as you can, because then you're going to end up with a bigger knot. So I'm going to keep pulling on this floss until I go all the way up to the knot. So the knot that I had tied on the end of my floss is holding that folio, or sorry, that signature to the inside of my cover. So on the inside of the book, the knot's right up against the paper. On the outside of the book, it looks like this. Now, the only time that you're going to have to do this little trick about going back through the same hole again is at the very beginning and at the very end of the book. So just to start, only to start, we're going to go right back through the same hole that our floss is coming out of. So I'm going to take the needle and I'm going to make sure I go right back through the same hole in both the cover and the signature. And I don't want to pierce the knot, so I don't want my needle to go through the knot, and I still want the knot to be up against the book. So if it starts to get pulled out, you can kind of hold the knot to the side with your finger. So that when you come back inside, you're not piercing that knot with your needle. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the knot close to the book and push the needle through. I'm kind of holding it with my finger there. So on the outside of the book, I get this loop. That's where we need the paper clip. This loop is an important little feature. We don't want to actually pull and keep pulling, or else you'll end up pulling it completely out. We want to hold that loop in place. So I'm going to take the paper clip and I'm going to open up this little part of metal, the end of the paper clip, the edge of that metal wire. I'm going to slide that through the loop. So I'm going to use my fingernail to kind of hold it open, or you can use both hands if you want. But you're going to take that metal piece and you're going to hook it through the loop so that now the paper clip's holding it open. So the paper clip is kind of threaded onto that loop. I'm going to then continue to pull that floss from the inside of the book until the loop is right up against the paper clip. So the only thing holding that loop open is that paper clip on the outside of your book. If you go to the inside, you have the knot, you have the hole that you just came back into, and that's how you start. From now on, all the way down through the rest of your holes, you're just going to go to the next one down, and it's just going to be a matter of sewing in and out along the spine. So I'm going to go out through the signature, I'm going to find the hole that lines up with that on the cover, and go out through the cover as well. So as you can see, here's the loop. I'm always going to keep sewing straight down along the length of the spine through this first set of holes. So if you notice that when your floss is coming through, you end up over a hole, you need to pull that out and go back and sew it through the correct one. So I'm going to keep pulling on the floss until I know it's nice and tight. Then I'm going to go down from the outside of the book and look for the next hole down. I'm going to place the needle in from the outside of the book, go through the cover and through the signature. And you're just going to keep pulling the floss. So on the outside of the book, it looks like you have a paper clip with a loop, and you have one long stitch. This is where the name comes from, the long stitch binding. So you're just going to continue to sew in and out through those holes. Make sure that you don't make a mistake. Don't go through a hole that's not in line with the other ones you're sewing through. You want to keep in line with the same group of holes all the way down. Sometimes this will happen where your floss will get caught around the corner of your book. Just don't let that happen. Make sure you manage that floss. And every time you pull, you want to make sure that you give a tug in the thread on the floss in the direction that you're sewing. So I'm currently going in and out of the holes this direction down the spine. So I want to make sure I give it a little tug at the end every time I make a stitch to keep these stitches nice and tight. So I'm just going to give it a little tug in the direction that I'm sewing. Keep going in and out along the spine. You want to make sure you manage your thread. I seem to have picked up a little hitchhiker here. There's another piece of floss that didn't belong. Give it a little tug in the direction that I'm going. So when you end up on the last signature of your book, you should end up going out through that last set of hole, that last hole. And you'll end up on the outside of your signature. So from the inside, when you're done sewing your first signature on, you'll have your knot up at one end, you'll have 3 little stitches on the inside of the book, and on the outside of the spine, you'll have a little loop with the paper clip in it, which is right there, little loop with the paper clip in it. You've got 2 long stitches, and then your floss will be coming out down here at the end hole. Okay, when you get to that part, you're ready to start your next signature.